opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. Welcome to Pediatric Perspectives, where we are taking a look at kids' problems from a different perspective, one that includes critical thinking. As you can see, I have back, and Polly and I are doing this about once a month. She will take over the reins and ask me questions. And this is always the fun one because I don't always know what I'm going to be asked, and that's a little scary for an old guy like me. But take it away, Polly.
All right, well, so good morning, everybody. And yes, a lot of you writing into us with your questions from the unvaccinated, as we call you, because you have chosen wisely not to vaccinate your children. But you have some questions for Dr. Thomas, and so I'm going to ask them on your behalf. And the first one is fussy babies. So these are babies that have not been vaccinated, born at home, and they are fussing with their feeding, and they're just can't put the baby down and that kind of thing. And so I think they wanted to ask you what's normal, what's not, and what to do about a fussy baby.
Wow, that is an awesome question and a very important topic because having a fussy baby, I mean, I was a pediatrician for 35 years, and that was probably the most common thing you deal with in infants, especially newborns and the first few weeks of life. Why are babies fussy? Well, let's just start with the birth process. I never really thought about this until more recently when I was involved with my partner, Dee Dee Hoover, who does body work on babies. And she pointed out being born is hard. It's hard for the baby. It's hard for mom. Think about being squished in the womb at the end of pregnancy. You are so bound up and tight, and then you're forced out if it's a vaginal delivery, or you're yanked out if it's a C-section. And that's trauma. We as grown-ups, we know if we have trauma, it hurts, right? Well, I think whether you're born vaginally or C-section, you're not comfortable. Let's put it that way. I mean, you just got forced out of a very tight space into a very difficult, harsh world. And how do you express the fact that you're uncomfortable? Babies cry, right? That's that fussy baby. So first and foremost, they are probably experiencing real discomfort. And there is something to be said for the vaginal birth because the process of being pushed out, it helps elongate the spine and it helps straighten you out a bit. If you've been scrunched out and then just pulled out quickly with a C-section, you don't get that process of lengthening, and also it helps the lungs being born vaginally because you're being forced out and you're getting some of the fluids that were stuck in the lungs out of there. The whole process is very difficult and it's hard. At this point, we're just talking you're being born. So this is vaccinated or unvaccinated. Babies will cry if they're uncomfortable. They'll obviously cry if they're hungry. And some babies will be aware of the fact that they're wet or poopy and they cry because they don't like that feeling. So there are a number of things that new parents will start to figure out, oh, that's the fussy cry because they're hungry, or that's the cry because they need to be changed. But some babies are just crying all the time. They're trying to tell you they're uncomfortable. And so that's how we start at the newborn period. And there are things you can do. I did not know the amazing benefits of body work. And I've taken craniosacral training myself. And then, I remember in training even, I would go to the ER and as a pediatrician, you go to call to the emergency room to take care of a fussy baby. And sometimes just the ability to hold that baby in a way that baby knew you weren't afraid, you were totally comfortable. Grandmas know this, right? You'll have your granddaughter who's fussy, and if you're lucky enough to have the opportunity to hold them, if you're experienced and you love babies, you hold them and they settle right down. It's how you're holding them, and it's also the fact that you're not anxious. Babies can pick up on parental anxiety.
Do you recommend a chiropractor for a newborn baby? Number one question. And number two, what is body work?
There are chiropractors who specialize in babies and newborns and young kids and know that, this isn't a time to do chiropractic in the sense that we think of chiropractic, which is that manipulation kind of thing. Babies should not be manipulated. But if your chiropractor is doing gentle craniosacral work, or if they're doing gentle massage type work where you're relieving tension, that can be extremely helpful. And there are a few chiropractors that do that, but most I don't think have the experience or training in young children, especially babies. The same goes true for body workers who, if they've specialized in working on infants, they probably know how to do that gentle work, decompression, very gentle stretching of the spine to relieve tension, and it can be miraculous.
Now, what about, we had another mother write to us about she thinks that she might be eating something that's setting the baby off, but she doesn't know. But she
Yeah.
said after she's fed her baby, the baby's just like pretty hysterical the whole time.
Yes, that's a very real thing. I will say this. In my entire career of 35 years, very busy pediatrician, I was having 30 newborns per month or more. I only had one baby that did better off of breast milk. Only one in my entire career. Thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of babies. So breast milk is very, very important, and please do all you can to make sure you're still breastfeeding. But to address your question, Polly, there are foods that you might eat as a mom that don't sit well with your baby's intestinal tract. And these actually are often the same foods that we are now aware commonly cause food sensitivities. So we're talking gluten, dairy, eggs. It could be anything. I mean, it could be onions, garlic, broccoli. There's all sorts of things that can do this. So moms, you may have to, for example, go gluten dairy free as a starter if your baby is really fussy and you're starting to see a connection with what you eat.
So another mother has written to us about how she can't, her baby's very fussy and she feels like it's probably wind or something, but she can't, for the life of her, help her baby burp.
Oh, burping. That's funny. I thought I was the baby whisperer and I had a burping technique that worked for me, but not always. So I would just throw the babies over my shoulder and I would tap with a cupped hand and just gentle tapping, and I would do what I call the new parent dance. I'm sort of walking around bouncing and patting and all that. And often I would get a burp. And it's true. Sometimes when babies burp, they just go, ah, that's better. I mean, it was actually causing them discomfort. I've learned, I had this one baby who I could not calm. And this was a mom, experienced mom. This was her third or fourth baby. And she was nursing and she had nursed all her babies till 2 or 3. And this baby was just fussy and would not calm no matter what. And she wasn't vaccinating. It was like, what is going on? I couldn't get the burp. I couldn't make anything happen. At that point, I knew Dee Dee Hoover, who did baby body work, and sent this mom to her. And we got a video back. This was the first time that baby had ever stopped crying in months. It was miraculous. And it was a combination of teaching a burping technique. We have this burping video on our website, Paul Thomas MD, on YouTube. There's a technique that almost always works. And it's very simple and it's different than what I was taught. It's just basically sitting that baby up and gently tapping them, and you can get them to burp.
Okay, so that's just made me remember that we need to get Dee Dee on Mothers to be talking about that. I think it's essential because there's a lot of people talking about how they just can't do that. Now, this next question that came in is a little more sensitive, but I think I'm sure there are other people out there that are feeling this as well. This one mother wrote a really long email, and she's unvaccinated, they eat organic, everything's great. She cannot stop her baby from crying. Every time she carries it around, every time she puts it down for 2 seconds, she's screaming again. And she said that it's mentally taking a toll on her, the mother, and she doesn't want to just let it scream out in the crib or something because she feels like she's a bad mother, and she wonders what she can do. And I don't know how to help her. Can you help?
That's the kind of baby that is probably still tight from the birth process, and they cannot get comfortable. Unfortunately, pediatricians have been trained with this back to sleep program and this, put your baby on a firm mattress. Imagine how you would feel if you were already uncomfortable from the birth process and you're put on this hard surface, no pillow, nothing to support your neck. It's not working, right? So we need to do what works. And if you are unvaccinated, so here's the thing. The Back to Sleep program was done to conceal the fact that vaccines were killing babies. I have in my book, Vax Facts, a chapter on SID, sudden infant death syndrome. And there is no question, most infant deaths that are labeled SIDS or SUDI or suffocation or whatever they want to blame for that baby suddenly dying, it's all happening right after vaccines. These deaths are happening in the week or so after vaccines. And I'm just throwing that in. You're saying, why are you adding this to this topic? Well, if you have an unvaccinated child, you can make that baby comfortable in their sleeping arrangement. And we have a little pillow we use to help just it's not super big. It's just got a little donut hole. It supports the baby's head and keeps the alignment, nose in alignment. If you're all tweaked and you're on a hard surface, you can't get comfortable. So getting that baby to sleep on a comfortable surface, you can take a 1 or 2 inch foam that they use as a mattress cover, cut it down to the size of your baby's crib or wherever they're sleeping, and that will provide enough cushioning. So that's one thing. A lot of these babies, I didn't believe this until I saw it myself over and over again, but with just the right amount of gentle body work, you just see them go, ah. It's like, that's what I needed. It's like, oh my Lord, they were tight or, they had a pinched nerve. Something was going on, making them extraordinarily uncomfortable. And you put that baby in the hands of somebody who knows how to just move with that baby. I mean, you're just gently holding them in your hands. It's miraculous what can happen. We can coach on this at kidsfirstforever.com. And Paula, you're right. On your mom's program, you got to get Dee Dee because she can show and demonstrate exactly what she does in real life with people.
And also to that woman, I don't know if it's her first baby or what it is, but nothing prepares you when you become a parent for the first time for the lack of sleep. It's like going to an all-night party with no fun.
Right. No, that's true. And I did want to add one more thing. Please don't put your baby in a crib and just let him scream. One exception to that, if you're alone with your baby and you're at your wit's end, I mean, you're about to throw them against the wall or something. Okay, set them down, walk away, gather yourself. Crying will never kill a baby, right? But they don't need to cry. They are crying because they're in pain. They're crying because they're uncomfortable. And that's why you've noticed that when you walk around and you hold them, they're at least better, right? You can't set them down because they need to constantly know that they're okay because they don't feel okay.
Yeah, that's really sad. And I feel sorry for that mother as well. There's got to be a lot of mothers that are struggling mentally.
Get support if you can. Yeah.
Well, join the CHD TV chat. The people there will support you. Right, the next question, Dr. Thomas, is about babies that are sick after they've fed. And this one mother writes, her baby caught a cold from the older child, so it was quite mucousy and stuff. And she's got 2 questions. One, she says, is there any way to help my baby? I think it's only a few weeks old. Any way to help my baby get the mucus out? Because the baby can't seem to get the mucus out. And also after a feed is throwing up a lot of mucus coming out, which I would think that's a good thing that the mucus is coming out. But I don't know. You're the doctor. You tell us.
Yeah. So I see two things going on in that question. So a cold and a runny nose in a baby can be really difficult for them because they need to be able to breathe through their nose when they're nursing. Otherwise, obviously, they're not moving air. And so you will see those babies suck, and then pull off and gasp for air if they're nursing. In those situations, they do now have different sort of nose aspirators, and you can experiment with some of them that are available and see what works best for you. But I don't like that being done too often because it starts to irritate the nose, but definitely before feeding so that your baby is able to stay latched on and move air through their nose. That's worth doing. Otherwise, colds, they run their course and it will pass. Spitting up is a whole common thing in babies. I wouldn't worry so much about the fact that it's a little mucousy. If it's yellow bile, that's a whole different story. You've got an intestinal obstruction. But if you're just throwing up what you ate and it looks a little mucousy, that can be for a number of reasons. If you are blessed, if you're nursing and you're blessed with a really good production, that baby may be drinking more than their stomach can hold, right? So they're going to spit up. And what you have to do in that instance is more frequent, smaller feeds, just so you don't overfeed them to the point where they're spitting up all the time. It's something that we can coach on because there are nuances to what's going on and why the spitting up is happening. but I would try smaller, more frequent feeds as your first step.
Okay, good advice. All right, here's one for you. Again, from mother. In fact, all the questions we get are from mothers. I don't get any of you dads writing to us. So
Come on, dads,
come on,
jump in
dad.
there.
Yeah, what's the question for you? But this mother says that she has got, I think it's her fourth baby, or fourth or fifth, and she said that this particular baby will not go to her husband, and it's like affecting their marriage. And so she has the baby on her in that carry thing that everybody does these days, and then when she tries to like include the husband and stuff, the baby freaks out. And
Interesting.
I know these are the unvaxxed questions. These are the problems
Yeah.
unvaxxed have.
So I've seen that fairly often in toddlers who are going through stranger anxiety. And that starts, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, somewhere in there, I think. I could be wrong on the exact timing. It happens at different times depending on baby's awareness. So the really alert baby who's completely cared for by mom. I mean, think about it. Mom's doing your feeding. They're nursing you, they're holding you, they're cuddling you. And dads don't get that opportunity to bond in that way, although you can. So first thing for dads is hold your baby often and early. Mom is required for breastfeeding. We can't do that as men, but we can do just about everything else. So, and some moms don't want to let that baby go, right? I mean, this is your precious pride and joy. And so dad's not getting the opportunity to bond. So I think early bonding helps and is an important piece of, having co-parenting and it gives mom a break. I mean, as often as you can, dad, as long as the baby is fed, you can hold, cuddle, walk the floor, change the diaper, do as much as you can to be involved. And that baby now sees you also as an essential part of their lives. When you get into those 6 to 12 month stranger anxiety times, I had a dad who traveled and worked a lot, and he would come home and the baby would have nothing to do with him and was scared of him. And he's crying as he's telling me this story. And I shared with him, when you get home, put on your sweats and lay on the floor. Because this was a kid that was now crawling. And let that baby crawl up to you. Don't force them and you become their play toy on the ground down at their level. And sure enough, it came around. It took some time and some patience. But dads, don't give up. Stay loving, gentle, and involved and available.
Okay, and then do you recommend, because the last part of her email was that she was trying to like get the baby to take a bottle so that the husband could try and feed with the bottle. The baby wasn't having any of it. What do you recommend on, I mean, breastfeeding, but should mothers try and use a bottle to include the dads, or is that not a great idea?
I think I would only add that to the picture once breastfeeding is very well established. Because if you put a bottle in too soon and the bottle happens to be easier for the baby to get the milk out, some moms don't let down as quickly and as easily. The baby has to work for it. And if they don't have to work for it with the bottle, they start rejecting the breast. And we don't want that. We want to do everything we can to maximize the success of breastfeeding. So not early on, not for the first few weeks. Later on, I would say a bottle has a place if mom is losing it. So, Paula, you mentioned how exhausting it can be to be a new mom, and that is so true. And if new moms or moms at all who are breastfeeding exclusively are at their wits' end, and as a dad, as a father, you're watching this, right? You're looking out for your wife and your baby. And when you see your wife is decompensating, they're not doing well. They need a break. They need some sleep. That's where having a bottle could help. But make sure breastfeeding is going really well before you introduce that.
All right, the next question is about pacifiers. Yes or no to pacifiers? We call them dummies in England, by the way.
Yeah, dummies. In general, no, at least in the beginning. Again, we've got to establish breastfeeding. And if you put a pacifier in there too soon, it's easy to get in the mouth. And there is something comforting, right, to being able to suck. And so if you can be comforted by a pacifier and you haven't yet established a good latch, it's going to make establishing a good latch very difficult. That being said, down the road, if you have a baby that's starting to find their thumb, right? Babies want to self-console, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think at that point, a pacifier that's used not like constantly, but to allow that baby to self-console without becoming stuck on their thumb, I think that's okay. But watch carefully that it's the baby that really needs it, and it's not you, the parent, using it to make your life more simple, if you will. I remember with one of my kids, might have been two of them, my wife then really liked the pacifier, felt like the babies were easier to manage. And so they were always being given, it was just being popped back in constantly. Well, we had an arrangement. Thursday was daddy's day and the weekend. So on my days, my wife worked those days. I didn't use a pacifier ever or almost never. And they seemed fine. So who needed the pacifier, right? In our situation, it was the parent. But there are those kids who are so difficult to self-soothe, and the pacifier works for them and they're not going to end up sucking on their thumb at age 5, 6, where a pacifier might be useful. Just try to get rid of it before it becomes too much of a habit.
And also, what is the chemical they're sucking on in a pacifier? That can't be good. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but you do worry about plastics being the thing that you're sucking on for sure.
Okay, so the next question is super random. Well, I think it is, but maybe it's not. And I'm not entirely sure it's a pediatrician question. But anyway, let me ask. This came in for you, so I'm going to ask you. This woman says that she is on her third child, and all three of them, including this new baby, scream their heads off the minute they're put in a car seat, and to the point where she says she doesn't want to go anywhere. Like the older ones are fine now, she said, but the little one is just like, it's unbearable for everybody. Why are these babies, and she said her friends are the same, why are these babies screaming their heads off in car seats? Is it uncomfortable? Is it unnatural? What's the deal there?
Yeah, car seats, there's hundreds of them, right? And if you put a kid into a car seat incorrectly, they immediately start screaming. So it is definitely a matter of finding a car seat that they can be secure in, but also comfortable. They may need some extra padding on that car seat. Some of them are like rock hard, and some of them, the sides don't have any kind of cushioning, so you're banging your head. So they get a bad experience in a car seat, and they don't want anything to do with it. So you can definitely make a car seat much more comfortable than it comes from the store. I would work on that, padding on behind, around the head, but so that the head's not banging around. And if it's too tight, a lot of times kids are growing fast, so you put them in and they're fine, but you didn't realize that over the last 2 months they've grown 4 inches or whatever, and they don't fit anymore, and the straps are now squeezing them, and they feel horrible. So the mechanics of getting the car seat right are important. The other tip I would say is take some drives really early on. I mean, trained, I've experienced with my own kids, and I've taught parents to do this. When you have a really fussy baby and they're only like weeks or months old, take them for a drive and they calm right down. So the exact opposite. So if the car seat is comfortable, if you have a car that's not too modern and too smooth driving, a nice rumbly rattle, that sort of constant vibration that you might get in a car, it's very soothing. So you can actually get the right car seat, get the right arrangement anatomically for them, and they may actually really enjoy a car ride. Once they're older, they don't want to be restrained. I had two kids who were always moving. I mean, you put them in the crib in one position, you wake up, the blankets are all kicked off and they're in a different position. They did not like being restrained. And that's probably that kid who's screaming because you're restraining me. I want to move.
I come from the era where there weren't even any seat belts in the car, let alone car seats. We were just all rambling around in the back of the car. The next question is about raw milk. So this lady is asking, she's about to wean her baby off, and she doesn't want to give the baby pasteurized milk. And she's asking, is it okay to give raw milk to her baby after breast milk? I don't know.
That's such a tricky question. I would say initially no. And remember, we're not giving medical advice here.
No,
This is
just
just
chatting.
information. And the reason I'm reiterating that fact is that there is an organism called listeria. It's a bacteria, and it can kill infants. So under a year old, it's generally discouraged because of that listeria risk. And I mean, the risk of death is super rare. It's almost like the risk of death from some of these diseases for which we vaccinate. It's like you don't need to really be afraid of it, but it's not zero. So I don't think it's worth taking that risk on a really, really young baby. If you are going to go that route, I have a family member that did that and they've done fine. You need to know that source. I mean, raw milk, it can be easily contaminated and then it can be dangerous. But if you have a really good source, I mean, think back before the time of modern milk pasteurization and all of that. You had a family cow or you knew the farmer and the milk was generally safe, right? But yeah, that's a tricky question.
It is a tricky question. I'm sorry to throw that at you. So basically, just to remind the viewers here, we are just having a chat. And ultimately, the whole point of Children's Health Defence and shows like this is that we give you informed choice for you to make your own mind up. And these aren't the views necessarily of Children's Health Defence or even Dr. Thomas or myself, whatever. You guys have got to make that up. So final question that I just want to go back to, and we're definitely going to get Dee Dee on mothers to be. I feel like that's essential with all her knowledge and all these questions coming in. I think let's just go back for the last few minutes and talk to that mother who is exhausted, because I do think there's a lot of parents out there that are embarrassed to say that. And one of the things is lean on family members if you can, if they're near you. But also there are people, look down the road, there are people that would love to help you. They just don't know how to approach you. Ask.
Yeah. So, having a newborn is a lot of work. And on top of that, for many moms, the hormone shift that happens at birth. So the last half of pregnancy, or more than half, you have very high levels of estrogen and progesterone in your body that maintains the pregnancy. And then and for most women, that actually feels good. It's most women enjoy the last half of their pregnancy until it's too uncomfortable. But after birth, the progesterone and estrogen crash. And I mean, I'm not a woman, so I don't know this, but I watched some of my daughters go through just the monthly cycle and how distressing that could be. Well, imagine a crash of that magnitude, much greater than a menstrual cycle thing. And it stays low and you don't feel normal. You don't feel right. You might feel anxious. You might feel depressed. You might feel low energy anyway. Add to that sleep deprivation and the struggle of getting a good latch and feeding this baby. It's a lot. You need support. If you're not getting it, seek it out, please. Dads, if you're involved, hopefully you are, realize this is the time your woman needs you the most, or your partner in the case of if maybe it's not a man. We need to support our moms in every way possible. We need to do everything around the house for them. So this is where a mom-in-law can come in and don't worry about the baby, take care of everything else. Because moms are used to having to take care of everything in the house oftentimes. And this is a time that all they need to focus on is their baby, their own nutrition and hydration, and sleep. That's it. Sleep and feed the baby, that's it. Somebody else should be cleaning the house, doing the grocery shopping, doing the meal prep, everything, even changing the diaper as much as possible, and give new mom a break as much as you can. Night shift. This can be really hard if you got both working parents, right? And so dad needs some sleep to be able to function at work. But look, be strategic. I used to send mom to bed as soon as I got home to work and we'd had a little time to interact. You go to bed, feed the baby. I'm staying up with the baby. I take the baby in for a feeding in the middle of the evening. I take the baby back out so mom can sleep. Around midnight, mom, tag, you're it. I'd get a good stretch of sleep, maybe 6 or 7 hours, and then I left the room with the baby. I'm going out and feeding the baby. This is once the baby actually can take a bottle, which raised that other question you had of bottle feeding. It was super helpful to have that tool. When you don't have that tool, you just slip the baby in for a feed, slip the baby back out, and give mom a break every chance you can. It will be highly helpful. And then there are some times where your hormone flip-flop is so severe you need help, professional help. There are naturopaths and functional docs who can do this with natural hormones. They don't have to give you synthetic Premarin and things like that. But get the help you need. The best news I can end on is it will get better.
Yeah, it will. And to all of you, there are more questions that we don't have time to ask now, but Dr. Paul Thomas and I will be doing this again. So do keep your questions coming in. You don't have to be an unvaccinated mother to send your questions in. Any of you can send the questions in, but do keep them coming, and we'll throw them over to Dr. Thomas for his advice. But thank you so much for this. It's been very informative.
Thank you, Paula. You have great questions. And for all of you watching, I hope it was helpful. I look forward to seeing you again next week. If you haven't gotten my latest book, Vax Facts, it is loaded with the information you need to make decisions about vaccines. And you can get coaching from myself and Dee Dee Hoover, who is an infant newborn master, at kidsfirstforever.com.
Wonderful. We are live. So can you tell us who you both are?
I'm Laura Bono.
I'm Scott Bono.
Okay, and Laura, you have to tell everybody what you do for a living.
I work for Children's Health Defense. I've been with Children's Health Defense since the very beginning, since we were World Mercury Project and we rebranded, so since 2016.
And Scott has done so much for our community anyway, so there's that. We'll talk about that. Well, it's true. Right, so first question is, how many children do you both have?
We've got 3 kids.
And how old are they now?
Our twins are 36 and our son is 34.
So you had the twins before you had Jackson, and Jackson's the one that got injured.
Exactly.
That's correct.
So when you were pregnant with the twins, did you both have a conversation at all about vaccines?
No, I didn't. I mean, I don't recall one. I just accepted it that that's what I should do. And there was not internet back then. I mean, I trusted my pediatrician, which of course I'm sure is what's happening now. And we did the twins, we did the full amount of vaccines, but it was with Jackson that he's the one that had the issue.
You had them.
Of course, we went through the birthing for first parents, the birthing classes, and there was always that. And you're going to do your dip-dap. It was sort of like a Raising Arizona episode. We got to get your dip-dap. We got to get. So the vaccines were introduced as part of the birthing class program, and all that. It was all part of the same thing.
But I think it's important because the twins were girls.
Yes.
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 And
they were before '89 too.
And
so the
they
vaccine
were
schedule.
They were only 5 pounds each.
Yes.
And they were absolutely fine. I mean, they're the ones that they were born a month early, and their little APGAR scores, they were suffering. I mean, they were, they were early, right? And I had a difficult time because I was getting sick with preeclampsia, and then Jackson comes along, perfect pregnancy, 9 and 10 APGAR scores, 9-pounder. No problems with delivery, and actually up until he was 18 months old, or right at 17 months when he was had the vaccines, he was fine, reaching all normal developmental milestones.
He was just a precocious little boy, and my father had passed away a few months before the regression, and at my father's funeral, my dad's brothers were just over the moon for my son. This beautiful little boy who was so involved, engaged, running around, hugging, slapping, the high fives, and all these Bono men, my uncles, were just, goo-goo over this beautiful young boy. And then after the vaccines in August, we had a Bono family reunion. And it was up in Pennsylvania. We got to the event, and this little boy was gone. He didn't want anything to do with anybody. And those uncles who had swooned over my son just months before, you could tell their feelings were hurt because this little boy wanted nothing to do with them. It had nothing to do with them. It had everything to do with him, with Jackson. And he just went off into his own little world, and that was sad.
So a couple of things that I think is important for our viewers to know. First of all, no Hep B at birth.
No.
So nothing that the people are dealing with today.
No, that's right. And I don't even think vitamin K.
No, vitamin K. There was nothing.
Nothing until DPT at 2 months.
Yeah.
So DPT, hip at 2 months. What did you have?
He had DPT and polio.
Okay,
at 2 months.
At 2 months.
2 months, 4 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
And the Hib was one of the catch-ups.
Yeah.
So they did like this. It's Hib titer is what they called it at the time, but it was to catch up the kids that had not gotten Hib. So it probably, in fact, they mention this group in Simpsonwood documents
Yes.
when they're talking about it, and they say, and there's, even after there were 2 shots available, there was this small odd group that got the combined shot, and they had more of an issue. That was a subset was they called them outcomes. It was a very sad moment for me to read that of just, my kid was an outcome, and they admitted it right there in Simpsonwood.
Well, and they identified that outcomes
Outcomes were that group.
as having met all of the developmental guide marks, and had done
had the
perfectly fine, and we're doing well. And this outcome group, though, was very special. Yeah.
So 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, he had HIB and DTP.
No.
DPT was at 2 months, and he reacted to that
Right.
first pertussis.
Yeah.
But then they said, oh, well, it's just take the pertussis out. So that was, red flag number
Okay.
1, right? That he was going to be a sensitive kid. But he was fine after that, to be fair. There was no issues. He got DT after that, which now we've later found out it had more aluminum in it, because they needed, the pertussis was acting sort of like an adjuvant, it was a stronger part of the shot. So in order to make the shot stronger, this DT, by taking pertussis out, they had to add more aluminum. So the DTs had more aluminum back then. So he got DT in 4 months, 6 months. Then you fast forward to the 15-month shots, was going to be DT, live polio. Remember, it was still live at that point. That's when they introduced the Haemophilus influenza B catch-up and MMR.
But he didn't have them at 15 months.
He had them at 16 months and 16 and a half. With twins, and life is crazy. And suddenly, I guess by August, I finally got in for the 15-month well baby. So that was to be everything but MMR. But when I went there, the nurse said, well, hey, you're here at 16 and a half months. You could go ahead and get the MMR now that's supposed to be 18. I remember distinctly saying, is that something that people do? Is that okay? Oh, yeah, people do it all the time. And of course, I had this big, healthy baby. Jackson was walking at 10 months old. He was just like this big kid. And so, I was like, okay, all right, that's fine. Sounds good. I have 3 little kids that were, think about it, they were all 3 and under, and I had 3 of them. So it was like, okay. So I got I got the MMR put in there on the same day with all those others.
And so then what happened to him afterwards? When did you realise something was wrong after that set of shots?
Immediately.
Yeah.
He number one, he was such a happy little baby. And so I remember him just crying and making such a big fuss. And think about it, that's how I was thinking, like, what are you making such a big fuss? You're fine. You just got a needle stick, you're fine. But obviously it was painful to him. And so as the night went on, he ended up getting this huge lump on his leg, where they had given him some of the shots, I guess all of them maybe, but it was a big lump on his leg. Did not sleep that night. I was calling the doctor, we'll give him more Tylenol, like, we all know that story and how that's not a good idea. And so he did get through that, but it was in the days that followed, and I mean days, there was coming and going of fevers that would spike really high. And by the time I would think, well, I've got to get into the doctor. It's 105 fever, what's going on? It'd be gone. So his immune system was just in complete disarray, free fall. Then the rashes would come and go. Rashes head to toe, and then nothing.
And he wasn't sleeping.
And then, no sleeping, and then the projectile vomiting. And that was a biggie, just completely across the room, projectile vomiting. And it would scare him.
Yes.
And that was, so see, that's what's because as a mom, you see that in your baby's eyes, that is scaring them, that they are doing something that's just so abnormally wrong. And I would tell the doctor, and it was like, oh, well, maybe he's allergic to something. He's not allergic, something happened overnight. What's happened to this baby? So I started now, that's when we got the doctor shopping, because I started going from doctor to doctor.
There's something's
What's
going on.
happening? Something's happening to my baby. He's no longer listening to us. He's no longer, when I talk with him, he's acting like he doesn't hear me. Maybe it's his hearing. Would you check his hearing? And they would check his hearing. His hearing was fine. Oh, well, you're just comparing him to the girls. Girls tend to be more talkative and more engaged, and that's what you're doing. And I was like, but he was fine before, and now he's not. And I started getting there she comes again, this crazy mother that's trying to, say something. And in fact, the doctor, when I asked, we were living in Northern Virginia, and I said to him, I went to the health clinic today and I got a hearing test for Jackson, and it was normal, but the
Speech pathologist.
Thank you. Speech pathologist said to me, you should follow your gut. You need to not listen to your doctor, what he's saying to you. You need to follow your mother's gut. If your mother's gut is telling you there's something wrong. Well, it emboldened me, because so I got on the phone, called him that afternoon, got Jackson's hearing tested, and they said I should maybe go in Children's Hospital. Would you give me a recommendation referral to go, and in DC, Children's Hospital? And I got this silence, and then he did this big sigh, and he said, when they tell you there's nothing wrong with him, are you going to leave this alone? That's what he said to me. And I said, I hope that with, two little twins that are less than 3, and here is this baby, 18 months old, and I'm seeing these issues, I hope that they tell me that there's nothing wrong and that I should go home and, do something more than having a full-time job and twins and a baby, So, but I did. I went ahead. He did give it to me, and I went to Children's Hospital, and then that's when so kind there. They were wonderful to me.
Sure.
But they said to me it was pervasive developmental disorder is what they called it at the time. So Jackson was diagnosed very early, and it was to me a very cruel regression of what he dealt with just in a short period of time, where this baby just went from everything to just almost nothing. And even in his fine motor, his gross motor was fine, but he could no longer even just like hold a spoon and feed himself. It's like the spoon would just fall out of his hands. And that's when they put his fine motor at like 2 months, and they said it was sort of like when you hand a baby a rattle and they start rattling and then they just sort of drop it. That was how he was with his spoons or anything. He just completely lost all of that. And, and then we started our journey.
But throughout this, were you mentioning the vaccines to the doctor, or had you still
Yes.
not realised
Yes.
it?
In
And
fact, I had a sister-in-law. It was a physician, family practitioner, and we said, we think this, and vaccines wouldn't do that. And to this day, I think she believes that. The worst thing, though, that journey between the insult or the injury, the date of injury, to where, because there was a time delay, we couldn't just go to Children's National and speak with the person there. That was wonderful.
Yes.
And the cruelest thing for a parent is to have your child want nothing to do with you. Mm-hmm. And he would distance himself from everyone and everything. If you were in the family room, which was in the townhouse where we were living, or it's in the basement playing with the kids, he would be at the 3rd floor in a back corner, as far away from everything and everyone. And that was, it was so sad.
Well,
the loneliness that he needed to survive. I mean, think about that. In order for me to function as a human being, I have to be lonely. I have to set all the people I love and that love me away from everything. I mean, that was the cruelest thing I can think of for a little baby, a little toddler.
Well, we were in the omnibus autism proceedings, and so we knew we were out of the statute of limitations, but it was important to us to put it on the record that our son was injured by a vaccine. So to answer your question, absolutely. In fact, when we asked we had to get all the doctor records, to put in this case, huge records. But early on, they're writing down mother thinks it's vaccines. I mean, you could tell mother thinks, and it was just all throughout that I was saying it, at 18 months, at 2 years, at 2.5, any of these doctors, and I was saying it was happening.
If you're doing a criminologist starts with basic fingerprints, timeline of the crime, to deliberately overlook the most obvious trigger to a change in a health status is insane. So to not look at what the parents we thought was the trigger deliberately and dismiss it, it's aggravating.
Did Jackson have the bowel issues as well?
Yes. In fact, we were very fortunate in that we found a physician who would address his immunological issues, his sensitivities, and we were finding in the testing all of the things that he was reactive to. And as we removed these things or addressed the allergies with immunotherapies, we saw some improvements. But it wasn't until we started addressing addressing his issues with an antiviral medication, and that was a game changer, because at age 5, Jackson for the first time was able to
not even 6.5.
Okay, 6.5, 5, 6, 6.5, be able to discern that he had to go to the bathroom, and
just a huge diarrhea constantly, 10 times a day.
And if it were simply just poop, that's one thing. But this was poop that was so acidic that if we didn't get it off of his skin quickly and address that bowel movement resting in his diaper, he would have blisters from his poop. And again, the antiviral interventions really helped. It was the biomedical interventions that made the biggest difference. It was, I'm sure that the behavioral interventions, the occupational therapist, the speech therapist, physical therapy were helpful, but they weren't addressing the illness. And we were very lucky. The Dan movement was in the mid-late 80s, and we became acquainted, thank you, the 90s, and we became acquainted with a doctor out of the UK who listened to the parents as to what had happened immediately preceding the regression, which when we would describe the regression to doctors, they were like, that doesn't happen. Regression is just, you don't gain a skill and lose it. Well, yeah, it's what was happening. And there was a physician out of the UK at a Royal Free Hospital. His name's Andy Wakefield. And Andy allowed us to come over and have him checked out. And he was pretty much like those first group of kids Andy looked at with the inflammatory gut.
Autistic enterocolitis.
Autistic enterocolitis, yes.
So Jackson really
nodular
only lived the life that was intended for him, as he was meant to live for 16.5 months.
Yeah, that's right.
And then
the trajectory of his life changed.
So tell everybody what these shots have taken away from you as a family and Jackson. It's important people know what they've stripped from your family, because it affects you, it affects your girls, it affects surrounding family, it affects the finances. It's amazing you guys are married, because 85% of marriages go down the tubes.
Yeah,
That's true.
But please tell us, so I think this is important, what these vaccines have taken from you as a family, and particularly Jackson. What's his life like now?
I don't look at it that way, and I'm sorry, but that would make my son a victim. He's casualty. He's a casualty nonetheless on the war of infectious disease, and yes, it's cost a lot of money, and yes, he doesn't have a friend unless we pay somebody to be a friend. Yes, Laura and I have had sleep debt going back to the 80s. Okay. Jackson is a nice young man who has no friends, who can't tell you what his day was really like unless he has had it read to him and he memorized how to respond. I guess the greatest casualty is that of the human condition and the dignity that we all should be bringing to the earth and our life. That is the greatest casualty. What his sisters have gone through, what my wife and I have gone through, is nothing compared to what he has to go through every day.
Yeah, and they realize that too. Our girls are, they know that. They never took a day. I mean, I know they are such high achievers, but I believe it's because they never took any learning for granted. They saw how hard he worked to just be able to memorize a word. You know, so they knew that that was not the way it was supposed to be. And they also, we were very straight with them. If they ever started feeling sorry for themselves, we would go, wait a minute, it's him. And you have to understand, if this was happening to you, I would be doing it for you, and I would be telling him that he needs to step back and let me help you. You know, because we're going to give that energy where it's needed. You guys, thank goodness, you're great. You know, and to be fair, it was small. It was when they were young. You know, when they were too young to even understand really what was happening. But I want to go a little bit further. I think that what I was robbed of is to see any sort of joy that I think an adult Jackson or a Jackson that should have had his life, whatever that was, given to me as a parent. You know, I've had those joys from my girls of what they were able to give me, what they were able to achieve as a parent. That and not that Jackson didn't achieve things that I was happy for, but there is just, it's indescribable to someone who doesn't know. But going to a school event and having yours be the one that's like getting into something, or he's in a special needs classroom, and of special needs kids, he's the special needs kid. I mean, he was always, it was so sad for me. I think I even have most times a very sad face because I was sad. I was sad so often because of Jackson. Just
Sad for him.
Yeah. You know, and then like Scott said, saving his dignity, feeling like I had to step out in front all the time. But then the gift is, I guess Jackson was our canary in the coal mine, that he let us know that we needed to, you know, clean up everything in our lives. And I think for that I'm appreciative, but I'd give one up for the other if I could have Jackson be okay.
Yeah, financially, it's hard, but it's money. Who cares? We can't get back the time. He can't get back going to a prom, being in the Boy Scouts, being involved in a group activity where he's not special, you know.
Unless somebody's with him.
Unless someone's with him, yeah. Now, the hardest thing as a parent now is having a 34-year-old adult male who's no longer cute have the same issues he was facing when he was 3, 5, 8, 10, 14, 17, 23. It's like Groundhog Day every day. The challenges aren't changing. And the reason the challenges aren't changing is because the research that should have been done is not being done, hasn't been done, and they're just letting these children languish with an illness that should be and can be addressed, not by parents who aren't in the medical field, but by people who are in the medical field, who are in research, who can better identify opportunities to regain wellness for these kids. They're not doing that. And that's a shame.
It is, and we've spent our lives after Jackson trying to bring these issues to
most of the improvements to autistic children or people biomedical improvements, interventions that have good results, are not the result of the researchers out there, but parents who are talking to each other about, hey, did you try this? Hey, have you done this? Hey, I've seen this. This has worked for my daughter or my son. That shouldn't be that way. We should be able to go to a practitioner who's up on the newest interventions that are available. They're not there. It's sort of like, yeah, well, you got an ingrown toenail, you have to live with that. Well, no. You can do something about this. We can do something about these kids. Let's do something rather than, put it into the black hole pit that we call genetic research. These kids aren't genetically injured. This isn't a genetic disorder. I'm not saying that because I'm concerned about exposing a genetic problem that I'm carrying. No, that isn't it. I wish it was.
You can't have a genetic epidemic.
You can't have a genetic epidemic. Yeah.
Well, and even when we would say about the diarrhea, it would be like, autistic children do that.
Completely
like,
normal.
Well, they don't do it on purpose. Who wants diarrhea, acidic diarrhea?
If we had to take my son to the hospital for an injury, like he's got an arrow or a lawn dart and there's a shoulder, I was afraid I'd go to the hospital ER and the doctors, he is autistic, and autistic kids do that. Well, no, it's the absurdity of that. Well, autistic kids do that. That really early on kind of made me crazy.
So lots of good things that Jackson and Billy and all the others have done for us. There's no doubt about that. But one of the most amazing things is future grandchildren and things like that from those in our family that can. Mm-hmm. So they've woken us up 100%.
Yes.
And many friends and family around. So there's that. Thank you. I look at my son and think he took one for the team, which is a ghastly.
Yes.
But travelling around on this bus, 2.5 months on the road, and okay, we do see the beautiful, healthy babies. They come and they show us their babies, and that's wonderful. But the injuries aren't as bad as they were in 2016 or whenever we first started to look at these. What's it going to take? Because they're not hearing us. They're still going to their doctors like we did and blindly believing the white coat gods.
They've normalized it. They've spent a lot of money. When I say they, the establishment, the NIH, whoever is behind all of this, the CDC, they've basically normalized it. Oh, well, a lot of kids are, and they've been here all along, and of course that's not true. Yeah. And so, there's been books about that. It's just they haven't been here all along. Right. And and it wouldn't make any sense that genetically they're just not going to continue, right? It just doesn't make any sense. So it's a sad thing. I don't know.
The question is how to break that cycle, is what you're really asking.
And the injuries are worse than they were in our day.
Yes.
These children are
really
completely...
What you're at. And so what do you do? Well, number one, you stop the control of media by an industry whose business model is making sure you're addicted or hooked on their products. So that sounds kind of loopy, but think about it for just a second. We've got an industry who, if you watch the news, legacy media news, there's 23 opportunities for advertising. 17 of the opportunities are taken up by drug companies, pharmaceutical companies. So number one, you stop allowing the advertising of pharmaceuticals, period. Full stop. Number two, you stop allowing the industry to control the publications. The Lancet, the Journal of American Medicine, pediatrics journals. You stop the advertising in them. You don't allow the influence of the industry into also our government. There are more lobbyists for pharma in DC than there are representatives that are lobbying. The amount of money that's spent, let's just talk about the advertising dollars. How many boner pills can we be sold? How many obscure drugs can we be sold that are everywhere? The advertisements are everywhere. I don't believe they're any longer advertising for a product, for a sale. What they're buying is the silence. They're buying the silence of the media. They're not advertising a product. They're occupying a space and controlling the editorial content of that newscast. That is the influence that's got to be stopped.
Well,
Number 3, doctors have to stop beholding to the pharmaceutical industry. Doctors are not simply a means to an end to sell a product, and doctors have to be take a step back, look at what their entire experience of medical school, the lead up to medical school, the acceptance of medical school itself, the study of the immune system, which is given cheap, itty bitty, and that is when you'll start to see this change. But the insidious influence of the industry on everything right now is despicable. We've just gone through COVID. For God's sake, they're still pushing a vaccine that doesn't work, that we were told would stop transmission and cure you. It isn't, it hasn't, and it won't. But we're still going to give billions upon billions of dollars of taxpayer money to an industry to give us a drug that doesn't work.
That they have no liability
And they
for.
have, that's the other thing. We
We've gotta take that
want
away.
to live in a capitalist society, but we don't want to hold the manufacturer of a product that we believe injured our kid and thousands, millions of other kids. We will not hold them responsible. In a capitalist economy, when you remove the liability of your product, you've altered democracy. You've altered the judiciary. You've altered justice. And there aren't many people who can grasp this concept unless they step back. Bobby Kennedy understood this concept. He got it. This is, you've removed the check and balance in the economic sense, and you removed the safety, the safeguards in the courts by not allowing these companies to be held responsible. This is a sin. It's a sin upon man. It's a sin upon our being, and that's a shame.
Well, and if you take away the liability that they have, this immunity, then there's not all this influx of money
Right.
coming in from government, which is happening, paying for the pharmaceutical sins. They're not going to, their products will have to stop because they'll find out they're dirty. They're going to not have them, they're not going to put them on the market if they're dirty, because then they know they're going to get sued by
Right.
people. So, and then they won't have enough money to pay media.
Right.
So suddenly that goes. So to me, it all started with the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see how the trajectory of, you know, the bars graphs that went up for that, what happened. And so it will end if they take away the immunity that they have, the
Yes.
liability protections.
Yes.
I believe it, and I hope that I live to the day that I see it being taken over back, because I believe that's what will start with the reforms that we need, and if it's all finished, then, and they have no more liability protection, then everything cleans up.
And the science is not remaining on that side anymore. And you can only carry the lie so long. That lie being all vaccines are always safe and effective. We've got a Supreme Court in the United States that says actually no, they're inherently dangerous. So how can you maintain the thought that they're safe and effective but inherently dangerous and not be held responsible for making the most safe product, most effective product? You can't. You simply can't have that. So how do you fix it? Start with VICA, 1988. There were concerns at the time that law was being constructed, when there were concerns at the time when the law was going through committee, and the President of the United States at the time had serious concerns about it. You know, got to give Ronald Reagan kudos for this. I'm a little worried about not holding companies responsible for their products.
In a democratic capitalistic
in a
society.
democratic capitalist society. Yeah. So I think Laura's right. I think you start there. That changes the dynamic.
And people follow Children's Health Defence. Sign up, it's free.
Oh.
Sign up to the Defender, and we will keep you updated, because you're fighting, Laura, with everything you've got. You run a massive team of people. I mean, you must be super proud.
I'm quite proud of
What do they say? Behind every good woman's a good man, or is it the other way around?
somebody.
There's somebody there.
Pushing them.
But we're very grateful for all the work you do for our children, for the future, and we thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you.